From the capital of the South, this is the Big Peach Ride and Run podcast. What a special occasion we have for you. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live, welcome. We are right before a big holiday, July 4th, right in front of us. For those of you who are picking us up on podcast, thank you for doing so. We hope this is part of a high-quality workout, and summer is obviously here, and it is time to ensure you get the most out of it. While the kids are out of school, the schedule's perhaps a bit more relaxed, and our targets for this year still very much in reach. We have brought in a couple of experts, even more importantly to me, a couple of friends. So this will be a conversation among colleagues and people who just enjoy being together. It is my pleasure to introduce Lauren Sock, the founder of Functionize Health, and Jake Reynolds, both of them lead physical therapists over at Functionize Health, partners of Big Peach, our team, and all that we do, and huge contributors to why an active lifestyle is such a big part of the Atlanta area. Lauren, Jake, thank you for being willing to do this.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, man.
Well, it's going to be fun. We're going to get into some things that I know you guys have a genuine passion for. In addition, you have so much knowledge. Every time I'm around you, every time I'm looking at something that you've published or something that somehow is connected to Functionize, I learn something. So this is going to be good for me and for all of our listeners. But you know me, I geek out on the entrepreneurial side of things as well. So Lauren, I'm going to start with you because where we first connected, I have to tell you, I didn't doubt that I was going to be overwhelmed by your knowledge of physical therapy and how to make athletes better at every level. But what was super cool for me and what I connected with so quickly is your equal enthusiasm for running a business that makes a difference, having a team that enjoys being together, and knowing that what you do is significant. So with that, give us a little bit of the Functionize journey because it's a cool story.
Yeah. I guess it was probably about 7 years ago, I started Functionize. I actually went to people's homes and treated them, did physical therapy for them in their homes, because what we realized is healthcare in America is broken. You really can't treat the person, you're treating diagnoses. So I needed to change that because I wasn't happy. And I said, all right, I can offer more quality and a better product if I go out on my own. So that was about 7 years ago. I went to people's homes and it just kind of grew from there. And so in 2016, we opened our first location in Decatur, not too far from your old location in downtown Decatur. And then just recently, this past year, we opened up our second location in Dunwoody. And that location, it's kind of our flagship location where we do a lot more with runners. We have a run group and we do our running assessments and our fit run shop, which we will talk about in a little bit. And Jake came on board about 4 years ago and joined us. And he's really been the mastermind behind kind of quantifying what we do in physical therapy, doing something that's different than other physical therapy clinics and practice in terms of measuring what matters and creating metrics for success. So we track what people's, whether it's, muscle mass, whether it's them learning their heart rate zone training for running, or how to strength train and what parameters those are there. So it's been a fun journey to see that happen and to build community along the way.
Well, and you've certainly done that. And I want to introduce Jake, perhaps with equal fervor. And that is despite what many of our listeners might think was a questionable start by being a University of Alabama 4-year letterman. There are Bulldog fans out there right now that are cringing. They're like, let's see if this guy's as good as Mike thinks he is. Let the record reflect. He was on the swim team. So whether that does anything to kind of ease the pain, I do not know. But Jake, you just heard Lauren refer to you as the mastermind. And my first interaction with you is like, man, this dude is brilliant. It was just kind of fun to kind of understand all that you know. And later I came to see your credentials and your own path to being where you are now. But first, I have to go back even further. Before we connect your background, you grew up in a family of 10, I believe. 10. So tell me how that impacts what you're doing now or perhaps even what you think about, because you've been kind of out to ensure that in a big group and a maybe even crowded space that you kind of have to stand out. You kind of have to put the effort in. You kind of have to, you can't just
Sure.
expect results to come to you. So how does that, growing up in a family of 10, how does that impact you right now?
Yeah, I love this question, and we are nothing but our history,
Mm.
right? And what we choose to do with our background. And I'm from like you said, a family of 10, 7 boys, 3 girls, military family. We're always on the move, and we had to learn teamwork from a very early age. So. Currently, my wife is pregnant. That's news to you, but we're
Congratulations.
very
I still
excited.
remember when you were just
Thank,
getting married. I feel
thank
like
you.
I've been on your
I
journey all
know.
along. This is super cool. Congrats.
You have. So we're very excited. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I first started changing diapers when I was 7. And so everybody had to pitch into the team. And that's just kind of the way we did things. But like you said, we all had to kind of figure out what was our place. What was my role in that team, and how could we all sort of work together? And I always enjoyed sports. I always loved being a part of a team. And I in particular, I always loved being a leader on those teams. And it's just been a pleasure for me to find myself in physical therapy, because I feel like I can come alongside people who are hurting or people who are wanting more for their life, who need a little bit of guidance. And oftentimes what I have found in the traditional model of physical therapy, or even healthcare in general, is oftentimes the person who's supposed to be getting the treatment is the one who's left out, which is the patient. It's not always explained to them. They don't always feel like they have an active role, that it's their decision on how and the way they go about their healthcare. And I always felt like we need to be offering more in education, more in partnership, more in empowerment, to be able to help people come to be the thing and the person, and to hit the journey that they want to go on. And so I talked about being a part of a team, because that's what it is. Being a healthcare provider is being a coach, but it's also being a team member to that person, and helping them along the way. And being a part of the big family always helped me understand the diversity of people's personalities and how to get the most out of working with my siblings. And I definitely think that has helped me navigate people in general. So I think that there is a lot of connection in that question. So I appreciate you asking
Yeah,
that.
that's awesome. See, I told y'all, University of Alabama diploma. This dude is smart and obviously fun to be around. So both of you kind of mentioned this. I told you that I was going to ask this question, and it's part of what I'm even to this day curious about. And perhaps I was going to ask it later, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it now to kind of tie into what you both just mentioned. And here's the term: cash-based physical therapy. Lauren, you were frustrated when you were with other firms or doing physical therapy in other environments. And that was part of, it seems like, the motivation for you to strike out on your own, to ensure that Functionize did become a real thing. And then you heard Jake mention people being left out, and what a shame that is when those who perhaps need it most are unable to either access it or stick with it to the degree necessary to get the full benefit from it. So let's just uncover cash-based physical therapy. What is it?
What is it? Yeah, so it's kind of become a common term in our industry for places that don't take insurance directly, meaning people are coming to us and paying cash upfront for the service. I like to call it client-centered physical therapy, meaning that it allows us to treat the person and not have to worry about what the insurance is telling us we are allowed to do.
Okay.
So when we use our insurance, they are telling us how we can charge the client. So certain ways that we can bill the client, the body part that we can treat, and how many visits we can treat that person for a specific body part. For instance, if somebody comes in for knee pain, and that's what the doctor ordered, we can only treat the knee, but we are not allowed to look at the ankle or the hip, depending on the insurance. So, we know if you have a running injury, the knee is usually, that's the victim. The actual culprit is somewhere up above or below the chain. So we're doing people a disservice by just treating the pain and not the true cause of that pain. So it allows us to create a solution and a path for them to get better and to truly get to where they want to be functionally. And we're not just putting a Band-Aid on it, and it's not cookie cutter to what the insurance wants. Because a lot of times the insurance wants us to follow a specific protocol, which just makes it, kind of dumbed down personal training. I mean, you can go to a personal trainer that's going to get you stronger and get you moving. And the other piece of it is, in healthcare in general, there's a lack of transparency of cost. And that is where people are, getting kind of trapped because they go to these places and they're not being told that they're going to leave with a bill for $300, $400. And maybe they only saw the physical therapist for 15 minutes, where you can come to us and we are telling you exactly what your costs are up front. And you know that you're going to get a full hour of our attention to truly dedicate to your care. So people get better faster using the cash-based model than if they went to a large practice where they're only being seen, with the therapist for a short time, and there might be 4 people that the therapist is managing at that time. So it allows us, to really enjoy what we're meant to do. What Jake said, like, we're there to be their guide and their cheerleader. We're not there to just be the driver and say, you need to follow these steps because your insurance told us to.
Wow. And it is fascinating. I have to admit, you said it's becoming a little bit more prevalent. I still feel like there are many who are not familiar with it. They would have a conversation with you, not a form that needs to be filled out and ultimately submitted. And the term that the first time I heard you explain to me came to mind, and I'm going to ask you to validate this or perhaps reject it. Customized. It allows you to customize the treatment. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can kind of craft what we think the person really needs each time they come to us, because they might come to us to treat the knee pain, but then the knee pain goes away and they're like, well, now I'm ready to start running again. Can we start to look at my running form to see if I can, run faster or prevent this injury in the future? And then they do that, start running, and they're like, all right, now I'm ready for the 5K. Can we start training for that? And so it becomes customized based off of them progressing through a journey towards, overall wellness and, optimizing their health.
Well, and here's what I'll say. We have people come into our stores, and let's just continue to pick at the knee a little bit. And somebody will say, I have knee pain, and somebody else will pipe in, I have knee pain too. And other than the fact that they're using the same terminology, there's almost nothing that is similar about the knee pain of the person who admitted that was bothering them first and the person who just chimed in afterwards. It truly is an individual consideration. Now I'm going to build on, and Jake, I'm going to send this your way to answer if you don't mind. And the reason I'm going to build on what Lauren said, she talked about the knee, and one of the things that I love is that when somebody has some discomfort, it is not necessarily that exact location where the pain needs to be either treated first or perhaps most significantly. But a lot of people don't know that or fully understand it. So let's put ourselves in the midst of an example. Many people in near term are going to be out there on July 4th on the AJC Peachtree Road Race course. And I do not doubt for 2, maybe 3 or 4 weeks afterwards, we'll have people who come into our stores. Thankfully, we're happy to see them. They're going to say, well, I now still have some knee pain after running the Peachtree Road Race. What are some of the things that you would say right now for people who have a little bit of discomfort coming off of that race or any event to be thinking about as they self-diagnose, or as they think about coming to see you or walking into one of our stores or telling a friend at work, hey, what do you think's going on?
Sure. The answer is it's complicated, but probably the better answer and a good launching off point is we first need to understand the human body and how it's set up. And while we are extremely complicated organisms, we're also very intelligently designed and very predictively designed. And I'll start just from the ground up. So we are a perfect alternating pattern of stable and mobile segments. So if we looked at the foot has an arch. It is an extremely stable structure. You go one joint up, you look at the ankle. What does the ankle do? It moves forward, backwards, side to side, and can rotate. It's mobile. Go one joint up, the knee can pretty much only move forward and backward. It's stable. Go one joint up, the hip is mobile. It can move in 6 degrees of freedom. You get the point. So we have this perfect pattern of stability and mobility within our body. Lauren mentioned this. The knee is often the victim of the hip or the ankle. In the absence of mobility at the hip or mobility at the ankle, the knee will make up for it. We are master manipulators. We will constantly rob Peter to pay Paul. And we do this because we're highly adaptive and amazing organisms that are so well designed and can take on tremendous amounts of load and live for 100 years, right? But we also do this at our own demise sometimes. And so my first to answer that question in a sort of roundabout way is, if you're having knee pain, it's probably not just the knee, and you need a thorough evaluation. You can't just go and get an MRI and say, what's wrong with my knee? Because I guarantee you that MRI is going to show inflammation and wear and tear on the knee. Without a thorough examination, looking at your ankle mobility, looking at your hip mobility, looking at your balance, your strength, how you move dynamically, what your running looks like, and then retroactively or making sense of that knee pain after having done that thorough evaluation, and after that, then getting a MRI to confirm a now diagnosis that we have said, here's what I'm seeing. Here's probably what would show up on an MRI. Let's get an MRI or an X-ray to confirm that. If it doesn't show up on the MRI and X-ray, it's what does show up on the MRI or X-ray is probably a red herring. How many people who have had a knee surgery to fix a knee pain that they've had, but then it comes right back? It's because we never fixed the issue above or below. We just treated based off of an image. These images are highly sensitive. They will pick up every minor thing that's wrong in the body, but they're not specific at all. They can't tell you exactly what the problem is without a well-reasoned clinical therapist or a running expert, such as the people at your store, looking at their form and saying, oh, we're actually seeing this. This is probably the culprit. Does that make sense?
That was awesome. I mean, yes, not only does it make sense, I think it's easy for all of us who are laymen at this to kind of understand. And you did exactly what I was hoping, and that is demonstrate, perhaps make it abundantly clear how the entirety of our body works together. And there's nothing that is perhaps a little bit uncomfortable right now that is entirely isolated. So Lauren, you've been doing this for a long time, and yet even prior to Functionize, there was something like the Peachtree Road Race. And yet you've probably heard some of the same unfortunate stories and some of the reasons to celebrate all along by the time we get to the end of the Peachtree Road Race. Why is it, in your estimation, that some of the things that those who ran the Peachtree many, many years ago were feeling now, even with all the advances in equipment, even with all of the advances in technology, yet we're still having some of the same challenges? My estimation is that it's the human body. And no matter how much equipment or how much technology, you still have to be mindful of taking care of the human body. But I'm more interested in your perspective. Why is it that some of the same things that you hear today in terms of what's bothering someone is perhaps the same kind of discomfort you were treating 10 or 12 years ago?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of factors there, right? I think, and Jake and I will, elaborate a little bit more. I mean, it does come back a little bit to running form. Things have, I think we have, a lot of people think that just if they're going to run the Peachtree Road Race, that they need to train for those 6 miles, and that is all they need to be doing. And they don't think about the fact that there's a strength training component. There is some form coaching that goes into that to help improve their efficiency of what they're doing. And a lot of these people look at themselves and say, well, I ran the Peachtree Road Race when I was 25 and now I'm 65 and I should be able to just run. We envision ourselves still being that 25-year-old and running at that pace. And we forget that it takes a lot of time to train and to hold our bodies in good shape so that we can tolerate the load that goes into running, because it is a lot of load that goes back into our joints every time we strike the ground. So in order for somebody to stay healthy and continue to run, and running's a great sport. I mean, they show that, the joint integrity or the wear and tear on the joint of runners is much better as we age than people who don't exercise. So there's no evidence that running actually creates, arthritis in our knees. But what it is, it's the lack of consistency in the training plan that we need to be able to run that and not be able to get those injuries. And strength training is the one we throw out the window immediately when we have to run longer distances. and then understanding proper form. And it's not complicated, but people don't want to take the time to understand what their form is. But like a golfer or a tennis player will look at their stroke and look at, how they're hitting the ball and spend a lot of time perfecting those parts. But we as runners choose not to do that.
So let's talk about running form, because of course we've been around the debate for, a decade plus now, perhaps much, much longer than that, but especially since the Born to Run phenomenon and some product advances in terms of midsole dimensions and other things that in our store anyway are regular conversations, and certainly in your clinics. Is there a right way to run that has some general or perhaps even universal application?
That is a huge
right.
debate.
It is. Who wants that question, right? And you guys got saddled with it.
Yeah. So no, here's what I will say. I will say part of that answer is we don't know. I would say the other part of that answer, and I use this analogy a lot, is if you lined up the fastest 100 women or the fastest 100 men in the world and you videotape them run, you would see significant variation between those runners, right? Because everybody's anatomy is a little different. Their nervous systems are a little different. Their experience is different. Their coaching's different. Their training's different. Their injury's different. You get the point. There's a lot of differences. There are, however, certain things those 100 best athletes in the world all do exactly the same without variation. Okay. And we would call those determinants or efficiency markers, if you will, or determinants of gait, things that we know that we can set our eye to say, everybody's doing this. And so to apply that to the layperson, what we learn and I are both trained in pose method certification, which some people would call us heretics. Other people would say, you guys are doing the right thing. For me, I don't know. All I know is that it's helped me better be able to communicate with people on how we as coaches ought to be able to communicate the need for reducing ground reaction forces on the human body. Because like Lauren said, every time your foot's hitting the ground, you're hitting with anywhere from 1 to 6 times your body weight. Now we know overstriding, this is a big one. People will kind of say overstriding and heel striking are synonymous. The best marathon runner in the world is a heel striker, right? But we could get really into the weeds on that. But we know that overstriding, for example, landing out in front of your body, has so 85% of American runners are overstriders and heel strikers. 83% of American runners get injured on an annual basis. Right, that's a lot. That's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio there. So we can pretty much say with pretty good confidence, let's reduce the amount of overstriding that happens. We know that landing on a locked joint isn't great. So let's bring you closer to midline. Now, if you land on your heel closer to midline or you land on your forefoot closer to midline, great. We know we brought you closer to midline. So there's certain determinants like cadence, like our fall angle, like how quickly our foot gets off the ground, that we know if we can coach people into those things, they're probably going to run further, faster, and feel a little bit better. As far as the nitty gritty and specifics, I don't know if we can say with tremendous confidence if we've got it exactly dialed in. Lauren, what would you say?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I remember going to the Olympic trials, the marathon trials that were here in Atlanta right before COVID hit us, and watching all of those runners, and every one of them was different. And it was amazing to watch how fast they could run with a different form. And, but what Jake said is like the overstriding is definitely the culprit of so many injuries, because if we land outside of our center of mass in front of us, we are creating a braking motion in our run that puts more ground reaction forces through the rest of our joints, our knees and our hips and whatnot, even our backs. And that is slowing us down. And so just if we look at, the fastest runners, we know that they do have a fall angle. So that means they lean slightly forward at their ankles. And that is what allows them, because running it's moving in space. It's the inertia and the falling forward that allows us to keep moving. So, if you look at sprinters, when they start at the starting line, they are at that incline because it's a fall forward that they're doing to create that speed. They're not doing that to to look good, if there's an actual reasoning why they are at the starting blocks that way. So I would definitely say what Jake said, like if we can at least fix the overstriding, so many things clear up from there.
So that's an awesome place to start. And I know it's easy to say, well, let's talk about the 100 fastest women or men, because there's plenty of video out there. If we're watching something on TV, we can see them warm up and certainly watch them compete. But most of us, now I can't speak for D2, but most of us are never going to be classified as one of the top 100 in any event that we do, right? And almost everyone who comes into your clinic is going to just want to get the most out of their routine, whether they're an elite athlete or whether they're somebody who just wants to get started and find some consistency. So we think about overstriding as a culprit. You identified that impact is an enemy. For someone who has not really considered this before, or might start because they're inspired by seeing people run down Peachtree on July 4th, how can they determine if they're overstriding? Is there some kind of self-test? Is there a way they can employ a friend or a coworker or a spouse to evaluate that? Or how do they determine, man, am I maybe doing that right from the get-go?
I think that's a very simple fix for most people, or at least a simple identification. Easiest way is to get a friend or set up your camera with you on a treadmill and have it on your side, not from behind you. Film yourself for a minute, put it in slow-mo, and then simply, as soon as your heel hits the ground, watch where it is. If it's outside of the midline of your body, meaning if we drew a line through your head and through your torso, if your foot is out in front of your body, that's an overstride. Now, you would particularly see this with people who have a major ankle dorsiflexion angle, or a heel strike, rather, I should say. So a major heel strike, you'll see the toes way up. They're probably going to be overstriking and heel striking. I think a lot of this comes back to our belief that we have to be running at really long strides. We have this belief that longer strides equal greater efficiency, which isn't always true. We know that a higher cadence and shorter, faster strides are going to bring us closer to midline and allow us to fall, which we know is our primary force of forward movement. So I think that most people believe that if I stride really long, I'm gonna be more efficient. I'm gonna be faster, and that often leads to an overstride too. So Lauren can talk more about some of the other things that she might be able to fix. But yeah, easiest one is film yourself from the side, see where your heel's landing in relation to midline of your body.
Yeah.
Awesome. Lauren?
And I would just say also, like with that, looking at that, your knee should not be straight when you land. There should be a slight bend in the knee. That is to absorb shock. So if you're landing on a straight knee, you're just locking out every joint and absorbing those forces. So that's another part of it. And some of the easiest ways to clear it up is to figure out what your running cadence is. They say that, to be efficient in your running, you want a cadence of 180 or higher. People would, everybody has their own opinion about that. So I'm not necessarily going to go on what everybody says, but the faster your cadence is, and cadence is not speed and cadence, you can still go at a fast cadence, meaning how many steps you take per minute at very slow speeds, but it's how quickly you lift your foot off the ground. So you're striking the ground and then you're quickly pulling it off. And so if you go at a higher cadence, you will automatically, it'll force you to be less of an overstrider because you can't take short steps and overstride at the same time. So we encourage people to track their cadence, and you simply just, you pick one side of your body, the right foot, and you run for a minute and you count how many times that right foot hits the ground. Then you multiply that by 2 and you figure out what your cadence is per minute.
Awesome. I'm so glad I asked that question. Both of you did a terrific job of giving us something very easy and tactically important to keep in mind. So anyone who has listened from the onset can tell how qualified you are to talk about running and helping runners not only get better, but get the most out of it by avoiding discomfort, perhaps avoiding injury altogether. One of the things that brought us together was my personal understanding of just how true that is. Of course, I didn't know that. We've worked with physical therapists, and there are a lot of great physical therapists in and around Atlanta and perhaps in many, many areas. But the conversations we had, not just about running form, but quite frankly, how to evaluate runners from head to toe, which it was just so impressive. Now, we have a curriculum that we do for everyone on our team, but here's what I'll say. I'll fully admit this as the founder of Big Peach. If you go person to person, the Functionize team and the Big Peach team, per cap or per individual, the knowledge of evaluation of running form is higher at Functionize. And the reason I can say that is our curriculum, quite frankly, is intended to get everybody to a certain proficiency in a certain period of time so we can help many, many people and give them things to think about to make good choices for themselves, including the equipment they wear. You guys are going to dive deeper, and now we have a partnership around this Fit Run Shop. For me, it was born out of the fact that it's like anyone we send to Functionize to get more, to get better, we just know they're in really, really good hands. I'm going to start with maybe the fun question. Where did y'all get your own personal interest in this? There are some people that don't want to geek out about running form. They just want to be told what to do and get to it. Both of you have a genuine interest, almost a desire to engineer perfect running form. Where did that come from? Jake, you're a swimmer. Lauren, you're an entrepreneur. Where did this come from?
It came from swimming. You know, that I like you said, I swam my entire life. And I thought because I was an endurance athlete and because I knew how to suffer that I could be a good runner. And when I started running, when I retired from swimming, I quickly realized that was nothing could be further from the truth. I immediately got injured and I dealt with those injuries consistently. And I felt like a failure. I felt like I'm supposed to be tougher than this. And then I kind of realized, dude, it took you 23 years to even just start to scratch the surface on how to become an elite swimmer. Like becoming a good runner is not going to happen overnight. And I never learned how to run. And I realized that most of us never learned how to run. We start running at 2 years old. But when was the last time at a school during PE class, you know, the gym coach says, all right, everybody line up. We're going to start working on your kick, you know, or we're going to start working on your fall angle of a run. It just doesn't happen. We just run, which is great, but it's not ideal. And so mine was born out of dealing with my own injuries, seeking out the expertise of people who could help me, picking up things from them, taking that little bit of information, looking over here, getting another bit of information, and then over time kind of piecing it together and kind of figuring it out by listening to experts all over the internet and just, you know, you can figure it out. And then Poe's method did help me a lot personally.
Wow. Awesome. Lauren, how about you? Where did you develop this deep understanding?
Well, I think just as physical therapists in general, you know, we have a keen eye for movement and understanding movement. We like to watch how people, you know, how they move and how they can move better. But, I didn't become a runner until I was just, you know, kind of recreationally in college, more for stress management and all that. And then I became a mom and I kind of stopped for a period of time because I have twins and then a younger daughter. So the twins kind of put me on the sideline for a little bit because I couldn't even get sleep at night. But you know, one of the things I always learned was that girls and boys, as they're growing in childhood development, they run very similarly until girls hit puberty. And when they hit puberty, a lot of things change. And I could see this in my own children as they grow. So my older two are 17, the twins, and then my daughter's 12. And I found it super interesting how this running form changes in girls and how they become more injured, whether it's, you know, their hips get wider during puberty, their knee angles change. They don't really understand their bodies. And my daughter's going through this right now as a 12-year-old gymnast. She's like, you know, her performance has, you know, kind of gone backwards just because she doesn't understand her body right now until she grows back into it. But so that I became fascinated watching my kids and their friends, their running form. And I found that I wanted to help my kids improve their form and not get into those, you know, have those injuries that I've seen other people. And then now that I'm, older and I work a lot with postpartum women, I find it super interesting getting them back to running as well, because moms go for 9 months waddling side to side, and then suddenly 6 weeks after having a baby, they think they can go back to running, and that's not always the best choice to try to help them improve their running form and minimize injuries. So it's kind of based off of this idea of like, how can I help women throughout the lifespan become runners and not get injured? Because it's really hard with, all the changes that happen in our bodies. And then you have osteoporosis on top of that as we get in towards menopause. So that's kind of my where I find my interest lying is the female athlete.
Wow, that's awesome. And I knew for both of you it was personal, and that comes through so evidently in your answer. So let's talk about the Fit Run Shop, because it really is unique. And I love when local businesses partner, whether it's with Big Peach or just casually observing others who are partnering. And you can tell these are two local businesses that have an affinity for each other. And now they've said, man, maybe we should work together. Maybe we can do something kind of cool that serves others or makes a difference for other people. And I believe that's what we've kind of come across now by working with Functionize. The Fit Run Shop, for us, obviously, we have tremendous inventory. And as I've already mentioned, I feel like, especially as it is from run walk stores from California to Connecticut, I'd put our team against anyone. But here's the reality. Even though we have some physical therapy students, and a couple of our stores, we have some physical therapists, across the board, we're taking what we've learned through our curriculum, through our personal interest, through what we can find online, but we don't have the certifications. We're not doing this all day, every day, each week, all year long. And you are. So what we do is we marry what we know about equipment, i.e. running shoes, with your deep understanding, obvious passion for things like form, injury prevention, the whole body treatment, and now we come together. So with that setup, give us the specifics of the Fit Run Shop so that I'm no longer the only one who's all jacked up about it and excited to talk about it.
Jake, you want to go?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think you set that up perfectly. This came out of, again, Lauren and I are always thinking. We're always thinking about how can we help people better, and what can we do? How can we marry what we do with the expertise of others? And I will say, you keep kind of propping us up and self-deprecating you and your team a little bit behind us. I would say that nothing is further from the truth. You guys are true footwear experts across the board. I always find it fascinating when somebody can just look at someone and say, you need to do this. Like, I took my wife to the Big Peach Brookhaven store, and off the bat, Scott there was like, yeah, she's going to love these Ultras Olympus. She put them on. She says, this is the best shoe I've ever worn in my whole life. So that is a whole different level of expertise and experience that your team brings. One of the things that I think that we kind of bring to the table, and just learning from you and doing in-services with your team, when you guys taught us about your footwear and fitting process, was, fitting for comfort, fitting for, certain foot specifics. And those are things we hadn't really taken into consideration. We think very biomechanically or nervous system related, and not so much about what's the experience behind that. So what we're bringing to the table is our biomechanical understanding of how people move. And so this was kind of Lauren's idea when we opened this, the shop was, hey, what if we brought in some inventory from Big Peach and we did shoe fittings in our store based on things that they teach us about comfort and experience and ride, and how that kind of that connection you feel to the shoe combined with what are we seeing, what happens when they run. And maybe if we combine the two, it leads to an overall better experience with that shoe during their run. And so I think for us, it's been fun to kind of experience this with people. And Lauren can give you a lot more specifics on the number of people she's helped with where they say, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And I think maybe, Lauren, you have a good example of doing this fitting with somebody recently who had this major aha moment when you did this with them.
Yeah. I had this woman come in. She had these Asics that she's been wearing forever. And she said, I need new shoes. I know you offer this. I want to come in and try it. So we looked at her running form. And so we film it. We actually film them wearing the shoes. So she wore the shoes that she typically wears. we film her, and she had, we look at hip drop, we look at, ankle inversion or pronation angles and stuff like that. It's not super complex because people are there to try on the shoes, not really analyze their form. But her right hip kept dropping, and so I said, you have bunions on that, the foot, the hip that was dropping. I said, look, you have your bunions on that foot. You're getting some ankle pain. Let's try some other shoes. So we started off with, a variety of shoes because we have the inventory here. So like Jake said, we have your top 10 shoes here at the office in all different sizes, in men's and women's. So we can try some stability shoes, some neutral shoes. So we had tried on a bunch of shoes, and I kept filming her, and I would see, okay, this hip drop is improving. Your ankle stability is improving. And she's like, you're right. I feels better. I noticed that there's a difference here in how I'm running and how I feel. And so then she's like, well, let me just try them all. She was like, so I'm like, okay. And so the last one we tried, it was the Mizuno. What is the neutral one? The Wave
Rider.
Wave Rider. Yeah. She put it on. She
Wave
goes,
Rider.
this is it. This is it. This is what and it was like this aha moment of like, I noticed that I'm running better, and this feels so much better on my body. And so that was like, it was great. And then, she went, and I think she went to the Brookhaven location. And, but I've seen this with people. I mean, not just runners, walkers, I put them in a better shoe, and they're like, I didn't even know that my walking could feel better. And the best part about it, Mike, I mean, like Jake was saying, you talk about us, but like, you have such top-notch staff. Like, I will call them and say, all right, this person likes this shoe, but they want it in a different color. What locations do you have that color? Or this person needs this specific size. What locations can they come and try on a wider shoe because they have a wide toe box that's going to have it, so that they know the minute that client of ours walks in your doors, your staff knows they're coming, and they call them by name. They're like, tell me that person's name so I know when they come, we can help them out. And that is the best thing, is having that partnership. And it doesn't matter whether I call the Decatur office or the Decatur location or your Brookhaven location. Everybody there is so knowledgeable of your shoe wear and helps guide me if somebody needs something different than what we have. And that's the best part, is people want a team, and they want to know we're looking out for their best interest.
Jake.
And one thing I should maybe say is Lauren and I are getting so excited about this. I don't know if we even adequately described exactly what this process is. And so let me kind of backtrack a little bit. So we got with Mike and his team, and we said, hey, what if we had some of your inventory in our clinic, and we could do shoe fittings and running analyses with people? And not to our surprise, Mike said, let's do it. So they did an amazing job of like setting us up with their top inventory, and like it was just such a seamless process for us, and like just so communicative. So what we do with that inventory is we have an evaluation sheet. We bring people in for that fit run assessment, and we ask them about prior injuries, history with running, what their goals are, etc. Then we're going to look at some anatomical features. We look at what's called a navicular drop. How much does their navicular bone, aka the keystone bone of the arch of the foot, does it drop when they go from a seated to a standing position? And if it does, we know that they're losing some of their structural integrity and may already be better suited for a more structured or support shoe. The second thing we're always going to look with everybody is hip drop. We know that that's a major determinant of injuries with people. So we try to keep it very simple. And like Lauren said, we may try a variety of shoes that we think, just from their history and looking at some of those anatomical features, that they may run better in it. And then we get them on the treadmill, we film them, we have them run it, we try the different shoes, and then we fit for comfort and experience. So it's kind of marrying what's the anatomy, what's the injury that we're dealing with, and what's the experience in that shoe. And it's been a really fun process to see like, oh, this works in like a multitude of really cool ways. So,
well, and I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg, and to even add maybe a little bit more clarity, when we talk about the shoes that are there, the top models, here's part of why there are top models. Those models tend to fit a lot of foot shapes really well, but it doesn't mean they're all designed for just anyone. And there are those nuances to take into account. So we now have these top models at Functionize. And as Lauren said, all the sizes are there. but the sale isn't actually taking place at Functionize.
Right.
So you get the stewardship of what shoe or shoes perhaps are going to make the most sense based on these things that Lauren and Jake have now detailed. And yet, when the purchase is made, whether it's at bigpeachrunningco.com, whether it's at one of our locations, you get the service and our guarantee that it's going to work from you standing behind it. So the purchase is actually through Big Peach. So it truly is. And again, when I've spoken to other entrepreneurs about this, they love the fact that it's two entities with real credibility in different areas that pair well together, coming together to benefit others.
Yeah.
And that's my attempt at being somewhat succinct to try to describe how it works. So if we get off the Fit Run Shop for a second, but recognizing that it's very much in the backdrop, I'm going to ask you to kind of cast a little bit of vision into the future, because to me, run, walk, shop retailers working with world-class service providers in physical therapy and, quite frankly, in whole body wellness like you, this should be happening everywhere. Right?
Absolutely.
The fact that I didn't have a colleague in Boston or San Diego or Chicago who was already doing it was somewhat mind-blowing to me. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, I don't predict that your crystal ball is necessarily any better than mine. But there are a lot of people who, over the last couple of years, have come into this active lifestyle again, or maybe for the first time. What do you kind of see happening over the next couple of years now in and around just movement and general well-being, and quite frankly, activity levels? What do you think is kind of that next phase or chapter that we write?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll go. We know we are in an epidemic right now as Americans. We're in an epidemic of obesity. We're in an epidemic of diabetes, and we're in an epidemic of chronic disease coming into play. And it's just now getting the attention that it needs with regards to preventative wellness. We know that one of the biggest predictors of longevity is skeletal muscle mass. We know one of the biggest predictors of longevity is if you are sarcopenic, meaning loss of muscle mass. That's one of the biggest predictors of physical disability as we age, is the loss of muscle mass and the loss of bone density. We know the two easiest fixes for that is loading your joints through cardiovascular activity and loading your body through resistance type training. Those things are free, right? There is hardly any cost associated with that. I look at CrossFit as an amazing example of a form of exercise that has mobilized a generation of people to care about their movement and care about their health and wellness. And people poo-pooed CrossFit for years surrounding, all these injuries and some of these philosophies. Who cares? A knee is way less expensive to treat from a burden of healthcare standpoint than diabetes is, right? I'll take a knee all day over heart disease, right? So I admire CrossFit for what they've done in getting people to care and creating community around movement and wellness. My guess is that now that we have a new generation of physical therapists and doctors coming out who know the research now and who have lived as a part of this epidemic that we're facing, that are going to start pushing movement as medicine moving forward. Lauren and myself and you and your team are in a prime position to help our communities in the best way possible, which is to keep them moving for life.
Wow, that will preach, my friend. Lauren, what are you going to say on top of that? That's good stuff. Pile on, please.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
The other piece of it is the insurance. If we go back to healthcare in general, we know that our health insurance is really wealth insurance. It is preventing us from having catastrophic injuries and illnesses, but it's not going to help us be proactive in our health like we used to think it did. So people are willing to pay more money out of pocket to be proactive in their health and prevent themselves from becoming their aging parents who are on medications, who have had surgeries, who, they can't even walk across the street to talk to their neighbor because they have all those conditions that Jake mentioned. And so they realize they have to take action now because they don't want that to happen. And healthcare is not going to be there for them in the future. And so people now, because deductibles are high and insurance rates are high, the average cost for physical therapy for a copay is $75. It's not really cheap anymore. So you want to be be moving so you can avoid those costs. And if we can be there to help people learn to be longevity minded and see how that movement plays into all the other parameters of health. And we preach the pillars of healthy living. So it's stress management, it's diet, it's sleep, and it's movement. If you can do those things, then we can get you on the right track so that you don't have illnesses and you end your life, ends shorter than it should be, right? We should be able to live into our 80s if we do all these things.
And live with plenty of enthusiasm, lots of movement, and just a quality of life that we would all be proud of, or quite frankly, if we think about, heck, even our grandparents, that would be so thankful that that's the way that we see them.
Absolutely.
And make no mistake, we are teaching the next generation right now what it is like to be whatever stage we are in. There are those who are watching and taking their cues from us. And believe me, people should be taking their cues from the two of you. They are Functionize Health, Lauren Sock, Jake Reynolds. If you cannot wait for the show notes, functionizehealth.com. Of course, we'll put a link in our show notes. Certainly friends of ours and friends of this active community. Thanks to both of you for doing this for us. Do not go anywhere. A couple of quick things before we wrap. First of all, we already mentioned many of you coming out of the AJC Peachtree Road Race. That's not it. Way too often, every single year, there are people who check that box and then they move on to something else. And unfortunately, that means moving out of what we refer to as a pedestrian active lifestyle. Do not let that be you. Here is my invitation on Labor Day. That's right. The next summer holiday. Once again, Big Peach Sizzler gives you that chance to not only celebrate your 4th of July achievement, but double down with another world-class 10K on Peachtree. And what I would offer is a much less congested, and although the Atlanta Track Club and our friend Rich Kanab might say otherwise, an equally fun post-race party. So if you have not already seen the details for Big Peach Sizzler benefiting miles for cystic fibrosis, please check that out. Of course, we'll put that in our show notes. Secondly, it is summer. There are so many cool parts of our trademark goods, Run ATL, Big Peach collection in our stores. Now, do not wait. Check it out, whether it's on the 4th of July or just to impress your friends. Get the latest peachy gear in our stores and online at bigpeachrunningco.com. There are new drops every single month. And I know that we, all of us, including Functionize, are Run ATL, and certainly a reflection of the active lifestyle that is on full display every day in and around Atlanta. So with that, what we will do is bid you adieu, but not for long. Every last Wednesday of each month, we'll be back. Join us again at the end of August as we do this all over. Dr. Lauren Powell will be joining us. Check her out. We will talk about nutrition. She has books that she has written and advice that she has given that has been game-changing. It has been life-changing, whether it's for you or a loved one. You're not going to want to miss that. But for now, as we always say, as we certainly mean, your best miles are just ahead. So long, everyone.